Consumer duty is a prime example of how data strategy is increasingly at the heart of why, what, and how the firm operates, not just a core input for risk pricing. Decision makers in all functions, and especially at board, need more and better than the current set of metrics and measurement tools. These are the future metrics, and in 6 10-minute episodes, Insurance Data Lab brings you diverse, bite-sized views from experts inside and outside insurance and financial services. I'm Shan Millie, and I work at the intersection of data-enabled value generation, leadership, and trust. And these 3 competencies are business critical for growth in today's market. And I think consumer duty is the sternest test to date for the firm to work out, do you have what it takes or don't you? IDL in 10 Future Metrics aims to help you to take stock and to take action. So now I'm speaking in this episode with Tony Cassin-Scott, who's a strategic data expert with experience in various sectors, including financial services. Hi, Tony, and today you're going to talk to us about the thinking you've been doing and some of the actions you've been taking around your Enterprise Data Trust Index.
Thank you very much, Shan, for that introduction, and thank you very much for inviting me onto your podcast. I just want to give a quick intro, if you like, to my background and why we're speaking here today. So I currently help companies define and build their data strategies. A data strategy is meaningless without a business strategy. So everyone bands around data strategy, this, that, and the other. But experience tells me, and it sounds pretty obvious when you say it is totally and utterly useless unless there's something to hang it onto. And that hanging it onto are the measurable business goals that need to be in place. So the first thing I do now, whenever I go and work with a company, is I ask to see their business objectives. I'm not there to assess the quality of their goals. That's not my job. What my job is to help them define and build a data strategy that enables them to deliver their business objectives. So I focus on 5 key data capabilities, and I look at the maturity of those capabilities as aligned to their business goals. So the first thing we do is we baseline their current competencies. So the 5 areas that I choose or have chosen over the time that seem to deliver that data strategy are culture and use, so data culture and use, the use of data analysis, what's emerging more and more is the use of AI, which is a hot topic at the moment. But of course, underpinning all of the above is data governance and data management, which includes things like data provenance, data quality, data privacy, and data ethics. All these are foundational blocks for the use of analytics, AI, and of course, the culture and use of data within a company. So having established what their baseline is, I then work with them to say, okay, well, what level of maturity do you need to be at? What is the minimum level you need to be at in each of those 5 areas to deliver your business objectives? And then we basically work through this, and hey presto, you get a data strategy which they can go off and execute. So that's the background of why I'm here today. And Shan, you asked me about, what are my thoughts on the application in the consumer duty space. So having read, digested, and thought about this, I think there's some things occurred to me initially. The first thing is the similarity between that and many years ago Solvency II, which was very much a show me, don't tell me type approach. And this for me is exactly the same thing. And we all know what Solvency II achieved and what have you. So I'm a big fan of the show don't tell me, but how do you do this from a lens of data? So my past experience is I've been dealing with indices throughout my life. First, when I worked for the Financial Times, and then I worked for Bupa. But I'm a big fan of indices as they provide normalized and simple to understand comparison metrics. Everyone knows, the bigger the number, usually the better it is, essentially, unless it's a loss ratio, which obviously is less good. But in terms of the in terms of measuring performance and adherence, indices are a great tool to use, or indicators if you prefer. So just as a quick aside, when I worked for a private medical insurer, we developed an internal index which relate to the health and well-being of the workforce to the financial performance of that organisation. That was a major breakthrough because it allowed us to identify interventions that would improve their well-being, which literally translated into financial performance. So for me, the links between indices and what you can do them is great. So putting my head to consumer duty, I think I can envisage the creation of a enterprise data trust index. Is a bit long, but something that captures that measure of trust. For me, it's all about trust. Can I trust the data? Can I trust the organization with my data? Can I trust the organization to deliver the benefits to me? Those benefits which we all know now are in the FCA, which are products and services, price and value, consumer understanding, consumer support. So I think the Enterprise Data Trust Index comprises 4 sub-indices in each of those 4 areas, products and services, etc. So for me, the value of each sub-index is a valuable standalone measure in itself, which allows you to cross-compare different companies, different firms, against how they perform against those measures. But the additional value is to add them all together where you can combine this enterprise-wide one. So you end up with a series of indices that allow consumers, and indeed the companies themselves, to see how they're performing against those metrics. So when you think about what do these metrics comprise on, it's a bit woolly in terms of you need to go deep down into the data that allows you to measure, for me, 4 key areas: trust in the data, trust in the use of the data, trust in the management of the data, and ultimately trust in having a data strategy supportive of delivering those 4 consumer outcomes. Going back to my introduction, the bedrock of that is the ability to measure, which I already can do because I've done it now several times working both financial and retail customers, the use and culture, or data use and culture in organization, the use of data analytics, the use of AI, and of course the data governance and data management metrics. So for me, ultimately, if you can measure it, you can manage it, which is an old adage, but as a good friend recently said to me, what gets measured gets done.
I love that. I love it, obviously, because I was the good friend.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Tony. That's really, really powerful thinking. Dan, coming back to you, any reflections from that?
Yeah, hi. To be honest, just lots of similarities really between what Tony's saying and kind of what we're, I suppose, seeing with Insurance Data Lab and what we're trying to do at Insurance Data Lab. Lots of we should have a chat afterwards, Tony. I think there's lots of similarities here because you know, talking about the how the indicators can be really important and how you can make some really interesting conclusions based on comparing different types of data. When you were talking about what you did at that health insurer around kind of looking at the impact of the health and well-being of the workforce against financial performance, we look at similar things. We did some work last year looking at the comparison between providing a good customer experience, insurers providing a good customer experience, and what impact it has on their bottom lines and on their financial performance. And we're kind of constantly thinking about how we can knit together various data sets to make really interesting kind of conclusions that are helpful for the market and can help around things like, with things like consumer duty and drawing in things like complaints, performance, and that kind of stuff. So I just think that's really, really, really useful, really interesting, and lots of similarities there, and lots of the ways that we could potentially talk about, Tony, at a later date.
Super. Okay. Well, Tony, not just for Dan, but for anyone else that might want to get in contact with you, where can they find you?
They can find, well, 2 key places. You can email me at tony@cassinfigures.com, or you can just look me up on LinkedIn.
Okay.
But there's only one Tony Cassin-Scott, thankfully, so that should be easy.
Yes, there is, and yes, it is, thankfully. So thank you so much, Tony, and thank you, Dan, and thank you for listening in, and see you on the next episode.